Welcome to JCATS, a program that seeks to introduce Japanese, contextualize literature and ideas for use by missionaries and anyone that seeks to share the gospel with Japanese people.
日本人から聞く日本のキリスト教。
Okay, welcome back. This is John here with my friend Kohei. If you
Hi.
remember Kohei from like 2 years ago when we were at his mom's house. This time, Kohei and I are going to talk about this program that we both attended. I think Kohei was working at the program technically.
So the title of the conference, the Asian Access Japan conference in Tokyo, was Sumibi kara Honoe, and we just talk about what's the best translation. But literal translation will be from charcoal fire to flame, and then John, you said maybe more like what, ember?
Ember, yeah, I don't know. I thought that a literary, like a stylistic kind of rendering could be something like from embers to flames.
Yeah,
Because embers are kind of the kind of thing they could either go out or they could start a larger fire.
So the national director, Asian Access Japan national director, Pastor Joshua Hari, start with this, really began the conference with this story. His name is Yozan Uesugi. Yozan Uesugi is the Lord of Yonezawa in Yamagata in the mid-Tokugawa period. He was sent to restore the finance, how the Yonezawa was, because they were poor. So, I think he was surrounded with the people. They are making a bonfire, I guess, and his sabone was around that bonfire, and then he was stirring the ashes of as almost bonfire was dying down, and he was kind of really seeing the reality of Yonezawa, and he feels like Yonezawa is just like these ashes, looking at the bonfire, and and because he is almost like disappointed, and he feel like, oh, Yonezawa can hardly restore because it stays so horrible. But then as he was stirring the ashes, he found that probably the ember was the right word, or charcoal, that was remnant of the fire was there, and all of a sudden he got kind of, he told the subordinate, like, you can be this ember, still ash, ember was remaining even under the ashes. Yonezawa look like these ashes now, but you guys have the little flame on fire on your heart, and you can be someone who can be lit other people who still, doesn't have a fire. And that ways that this, this comeback, restoration of this, place can be done through you guys, basically. And I'm going to be, also Yozan said, like, I'm going to be, one of those too, I'm going to initiate that too, kind of things. So that's kind of the story that Joshua Hari, Pastor Hari started that story. And so, yeah, this conference theme is about, from embers to fire. So like each one of you here in this conference, you can be also this ember in Japan, like, in spiritual realm, or the Christianity in Japan seems like ashes, but you guys are those are the embers. So like, when you go out from this conference, you can be, light your, the fire of the, whatever you call it, evangelism, or your passion for Christ can be lit throughout Japan, So that's how the conference started. And I certainly, actually every conference I have attended recently, in many Asian Access ones and even JCE7, I really think I came back with this feeling of fire, and I really want to share about that too, so.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was like, I don't remember what you're talking about, but I just thought like, oh yeah, because it was a 3-day conference and I only went to the second day. I
Oh, okay,
just
okay.
I
Okay,
just
you missed
learned
that
about
part
it.
then.
Yeah, yeah. So I learned about it kind of late in the game, and
Mhm.
so I attended the middle day. Um, but
So that's
that's
how the conference started it. And then, Pastor Harry explained the first day, we're going to talk about what's happening globally. And so basically what, people share about who went to Lausanne, Lausanne
oh,
conference
uh-huh.
in Korea just happened recently.
Yeah, yeah.
Some people share about it. Um, One of the highlight for me was, or at least, of course, they cannot share whole things about Lausanne things, but one of the things they highlighted was the number 99%.
Hmm.
Um, and then, of course, when we hear as a Japanese minister, well, 99%, we probably immediately think about 99% of who are lost in Japan, right?
Right.
But Lausanne, that was not what they're talking about. What they were talking about in Lausanne conference, 99% of Christians are not non-professional minister. So only
Oh,
1% is a pastor or missionary.
professional.
99% are the believers who are, you know, regular workers basically. And
Hmm.
but they really highlight this 99% can be a catalyst for the world evangelism. So that's what they pretty much talk about. Um,
Interesting.
So
I'm
like
writing
it's
it
like
down.
how you promote or I guess mobilize or empower those 99%. That was one of the biggest topic. Um, because those people are the what place that the missionaries or pastors cannot go, right? They work in the office or stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So and they really believe those are the key people who actually deal with unbelievers day-to-day
Yeah.
basis. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
In some ways, it feels like when you're in ministry, you
Mhm.
actually have fewer non-Christian friends unless you make a real effort to get outside of the church building or the church community to meet people.
And that struck me immediately because even before like I came to Yamagata, when I was support raising, and one thing I shared to everybody, everybody say, oh, Japan is only 0.5%, 0.5%. And I'm almost sick of hearing that, like
Hmm.
only. But when you calculate 0.5%, it's 600,000 people. And
Yeah. Yeah.
600,000 people is not a few people. And
Right.
but if 600,000 people take it, ownership of the gospel, I believe God can make a difference. But if
Yeah.
only the missionary and pastor is taking ownership of the gospel, that's a lot of work. But so, I mean, I don't know the stats is same in terms of 1% are missionaries or pastors, but yeah,
Right.
it's like, 1% of 600,000 is obviously really low. 600, so 6,000 doing the work in Japan. But like if 600,000 is, really taking ownership of sharing the gospel, live out the gospel, I believe, you know, make God can make significant this kind of impact through them. And so that's why
Definitely.
I said, of course we use the word discipleship, but however, are empowering those people are I feel is key.
Mm.
And sometimes my one of the picture I always, I'm not the movie person at all, but I always want to picture that, these 99%, 600 Japanese believer are on the stage of the mission with Jesus, and pastors and missionary. Pastor should be a more like a director, maybe missionary is just assistant director, in
Hmm.
the movies.
Hmm.
So like I mean, that's how I picture more the role of the
Mm.
missionaries or even pastors, you know,
Mm.
that we are the one that's actually encouraging the rest to be on the stage of the
Yeah.
frontier of the mission field. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think you have a point there that it is much easier for Japanese believers to make the kinds of connections with regular people
Mhm.
that can sort of more easily foster a Christianity among Japanese people, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think some Japanese people feel good talking to missionaries because they can sort of step outside of their normal inhibitions by speaking with a foreigner
Mhm.
and then get information in sort of a safe from being judged, right? Because who cares if a foreigner judges you in a sense? Um, so they can sort of gain information about Christianity,
Mhm.
but then how that maybe is applied in their lives. I feel like a person who's living it out in Japan, a Japanese person would have a easier way of demonstrating that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's
so
definitely, I agree, there's a strength of missionaries or foreign people to share the gospel because,
mhm.
but then I think it's really powerful that when people see it's living out, like straight Japanese people, the words can go much, right? No
Yeah.
matter how much you are saying the correct things, right things, if they don't see, you know, we are not, yeah, if they see, we live out what we preach, that's the really people convinced more than how eloquent we are, or so. But
Yeah.
and so I thought was really the second day, that's when you come in, but like, when those so second day, Pastor Holly said, second day we're gonna be focused on what's happening locally. So that's why they introduced these people who are on the Cohort group.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought it was a great example how the 99% can play a key role of, bringing Jesus. And I'm sure, one of the probably the biggest highlight of this conference was Asian Access Cohort group, that about 8 or 9 pastors studying together, and they actually go to all over Japan in person and then they going through the kind of learning module, but also they go to, India. They went to India as well,
Hmm.
and what they have done in India definitely impacted them a lot, because people come to Christ like that, like
Oh,
they baptize more number than they ever baptized in their lifetime in Japan,
oh
like,
wow.
yeah. So like when they come back, of course they're like, you know almost
Yeah,
like
want to see
they
that.
are so convinced that the gospel is so powerful, and so they are so inspired by the experience of India. So they like, I think four of them start talking, oh, can we do I mean, it's not like they can do whatever, what's happening in the outside Japan cannot be, they understand that necessarily simply apply, but
Yeah.
they're so inspired that, hey, can we do seekers meeting, in Japan?
Oh, do
And,
something, yeah.
yeah.
So
And
this is
then,
like a class that Asian Access Japan has that's like a 2-year
yeah, yes,
program,
yes,
and
yes, yes, you're
they
right.
was it they visit Hokkaido for like a week or two, and they visit India for like a week or two,
The
and
India is at 2 weeks, but like a part of Japan, I think they do, I don't know, like probably 6 or 8 places,
oh really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's
And
not, yeah,
they
they went to Hokkaido. I think that Hokkaido, yeah, maybe, I don't know, they went to Hokkaido or they just decided to do together with full pastor who went to India and so inspired to do the seekers meeting in Hokkaido.
and the course is some kind of an evangelism training course. Is that sort of what the content of the course is?
You probably want to talk to Hari Sensei about, actually, I'm
Okay.
interested in taking it, but it's
Yeah.
more, I don't know. I think he can explain better.
Okay. It's a
It's more hands-on than just the information kind of study, have you
huh.
heard of the men finding the Mano piece kind of trip? They probably do
Yeah.
stuff a lot.
I
Yeah.
read there was an evangelism book. I think it was I want to say by Robert Coleman, but I'm just guessing. Years ago, Dan Iverson in Chiba told me, "Oh, read this book about evangelism," and they had the man of peace concept. Um,
No, I mean
So,
but also Hari Sensei kind of like do like Heian no Kosagashi trip a lot everywhere.
oh, okay.
So that's
So
I
look
don't think
for
that's
a man of
one of them, but
peace
yeah,
kind of thing.
they probably do. Yeah, kind of door to door, but the goal is to find a man of peace in the city where there's no church and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so, but I mean that's only part of it. I don't think that's a whole module is about. I think I think they see the different case study. I guess like they learn about Kodomo Shok, how the ministry look like
Uh-huh.
Kodomo Shokudo or
Okay.
so and they visit the places and talk and and probably they discuss and because they all the pastors coming from different parts of Japan, so of
Mm.
course application will be very different in how they learn. So but I think they learn together and probably I think they learn by doing many things
Hmm.
together, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems very hands-on, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Experiential. And so this cohort on day two of it was about five. I think they were all pastors, missionary workers.
I think they are all pastors, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, missionary
Various.
joined in the past too. So that's why Hari Sensei is asking. And I mean, since because I'm Japanese and I'm missionary,
Oh
so
yeah.
it really, really encouraging me to join. I didn't do this time because there's lots of time commitment, but maybe
Hmm.
next time I'll actually join. So
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. I have interest in doing that at some point, when
So yeah, so they share, and then so one of the sharing was this about evangelist meeting. They help, the four pastors cooperate together in Hokkaido, and they intentionally really made the layman believers involved in this.
Mhm.
Kind of you remember that the girl, the lady, I forgot her name,
Mhm.
Mizuki-san or something, and
Oh, I think I wrote it down.
yeah, and actually she was in Fukuoka Asian Access like a year ago too, and so.
Okay.
Um, and she's only like a believer being like couple years too, but
Oh, really?
in this, the evangelistic or seek that's called seekers meeting or seekers night,
Uh-huh.
she was heavily involved in this, so and the pastor try not to be too much taking a
Oh,
they
yeah,
intentionally did that. Yeah.
the girl in her 20s, and I want to say her parents were maybe worked in a Buddhist
Yeah.
um temple.
So the neat thing is, so they share about how they did it, and then they brought the girl who was saved through this seekers meeting, which is I don't know, you can cut it off the name, but S Chan, maybe I should say, yeah. So S Chan was the one
Okay.
who gave a testimony,
Hmm.
because she was saved through that, and I think many of us are encouraged by her testimony. Yeah, like she's the daughter of the Buddhist monk, and and it's never an easy journey at all to even after she came to the Lord. But then and the people who the layman believers who were involved, they didn't know what to do in this hard situation, but still they were involved. It's not just pastors the one that trying to work this out, and so they
Yeah.
came along, and so that was so again, like I really like this. They trying to intentionally include 99%, like how encouraging it is to for layman believers can be involved in this kind of people who come to know Lord, right? Rather than just
Yeah.
pastors and missionaries doing everything, so
Yeah, because that's like a kind of an old stereotype of Japanese churches when we talk about why is the church not growing, and then people tend to say that Japanese believers look at the mm, pastors and missionaries as the experts,
Mhm.
and so they tend to leave the um
Yeah.
evangelism to the experts is kind of a maybe cultural thing. Like people don't really like change their bike tires or something, maybe they just take it to the bike. Like for my understanding is in general, much more you take everything to an expert than fix it yourself, as a culture that compared to like Western culture where people like tinker with stuff. So
And it,
the
it was it
yeah.
was and then one of the it's like as if this was the best was yet to come, like when she shared her boyfriend came to know the Lord a day before, which is the first day of that conference.
Oh
During the
wow.
conference, yeah, it's like,
Oh wow.
I mean, I don't know how exactly how it happens, but
Hmm.
yes, he was there, and yeah, I was so, I really, this conference is probably only for the in generally pastors or missionaries, but I always wish, there's layman believers are there, which actually is that lady who involved was in the Fukushima,
Mm.
no, Fukuoka conference. And then
Mm.
this time, obviously, few are there, when they share, obviously, and her boyfriend, who was unbeliever, was there and came to the Lord, however that happens. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is I thought was really encouraging, and praise the Lord for that, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, since we've been where we are now in West Tokyo, I feel like more of our evangelistic or just um work with non-Christians is much more like person to person than like church representative, you know. Well, the way we did stuff, I feel like back in Iwate when we were a little younger, had more to do with just trying to get people to come to church and do stuff with them at church as like church workers. I think that's fine, but it it seems to be easier to go deep with people when it's more of just an organic and like person to person type of thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, jury's out on. I guess it's not really fair to say one is more effective than the other, but yeah, interesting stylistic difference, I guess.
I think, yeah, I think effectiveness. I think when yeah, like when especially missionaries, probably we want to see the result quickly, right? So,
Yeah.
and in terms of that short-term effectiveness, I think the old way seems better. But,
Mm-hmm.
when we really look at the longevity, who should be the one that taking the, ownership of the gospel, then, you know, when we let the layman leaders, do it, it seems initially is I don't think it's effective at all. It doesn't seem effective at all, but in the long run, I really believe, and we have to think in the more generation term, not just, year by year kind of term, and if you think that way, I think the more effective way is let the layman believers more, do than, missionaries and pastors working too hard, but
Yeah. I was just looking at my notes and um couldn't figure out what one section was, and it seems like it's what you're talking about the layman being important to ministry. Um and one note towards the end is that it says like personal evangelism is important, like person to person, but familial context uh, is important. So like
yeah,
try to
I
evangelize entire families when
yeah.
you can, so that you don't evangelize someone and then they're isolated from their social group, their family. Rather, if it's possible, to evangelize the entire family.
Yeah, I don't know, it's okay to bring this up, but yeah, like I think many part of Japanese Christianity is heavily influenced by individualistic Western approach,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you agree
Yeah.
with it, right? Like the way we share the gospel is so individualistic,
Yeah.
and in Japan, Japan's society is a very communal society.
Hmm.
So if we trying to fish one fish at a time kind of approach, you know, is
Yeah.
a disturbance is obvious to the society, right? and to the family. So, and I think that's the wise approach. Again, it might be, seemingly ineffective in the
Mhm.
initial, but then,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
like you said, it takes time to like really gain. I think the more I like just go through like the life cycle where I live, um, there's especially Maki, who's for the listener, my Japanese wife. I only have one wife. I don't have a Japanese wife and a something else wife. Um, we've now Leon, our second, is finishing up sixth grade, so he's been in Shogakko at the same school since the end of first grade through now. And now we're seeing the relationships, we've been with some of these people for a couple of years in sports, and then we've been apart after sports, but continue to have a relationship with them that's kind of like some of them, it's like when I see them, I talk to them, and some of them, it's like they still come over and hang out once in a while.
Mhm.
And it's like I think at the beginning there was sort of some hope that those relationships would be more quickly fruitful. But a lot of them, it still feels like they could become fruitful at some point because they're good friendships now, whether something spiritual fruit comes
Mhm.
or not. It's not transactional, it's not like we're being friends with them in order to see some um evangelistic gain out of it. Like we definitely want to see that, but not because we don't want to treat people like objects, I guess. Uh so we've got those longer longer relationships. I mean, I think we were only in eventually in Iwate for 5 years total, and that's about how long we've been where we are now. In some ways, it feels like we're just starting,
Yeah,
you know. Um,
I agree.
so
Yeah,
well, yeah.
so like talking about how we encouraging the 99%, right? And
Hmm.
I start seeing, I think when we trying to encourage 99%, to share the gospel, of course, one is, of course, we maybe talk about how can we train them or something, but one of the last day, it was a different seminar and I attended, how to raise the leaders in Japanese soil kind of
Oh, that's
class.
interesting.
And, Kodaira sensei mentioned about, the fact that many Japanese people don't want to be a leaders.
Uh-huh.
And the biggest issue he believed, biggest problem actually is that, we are using the discipleship textbook, which were created in US or Korea, and that was meant for the people who want to be leader. But
Oh,
then
because
while
people
using
want to
that
be leaders in
textbook,
those
it's just
countries,
for the
huh?
people who want to be leader, and
Uh,
using to the people who doesn't want to be leader. And that he said
yeah.
that was the biggest problem. And it's like,
Hmm.
that made me think a lot. And but then I like how he example, like, when we as a parents, we raising kids knowing that they will be someday be parents as well, right? So
Right, in theory,
and
yeah.
and you don't tell your kids, teach your kids by going through a textbook
Hmm.
of how to be a parent.
Mm.
You know, you leave out, you know, how to be parents as you raise
Right.
the kids, and that
Yeah.
clicked me. So, like maybe his point is so discipleship is not just going through the textbook,
Hmm.
really
Mm.
how we live out together, and that's how Jesus was, right? To
Yeah.
spend time the lives with disciple,
Yeah.
and even he mentioned that Jesus didn't leave the books. He left the disciples, you know.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
Yeah, that's
uh,
true. The books weren't written
so
for sometime afterwards.
So yeah, and then I think also realizing, when we even trying to encourage the laymen to own the gospel, whatever how we say it, but then I understand like they might say like, well, like, we are working, we are busy. We're not like, we are not like you guys and
Right.
pastors and missionary, or you guys have more time, or you're expert, right? Like you kind of mentioned earlier. So I think biggest challenge is pastors and missionary had to also like think through, what is pastor's role? What's the missionary's role? Like, if you're setting an example that's impossible for layman believers to follow,
Mm,
right? Which we have been actually, right? Pretty
mm,
much, because that's why they're so intimidated to be a leader,
mm,
so but then like as you mentioned, like, you just invite and build a relationship with the family, and took years and years maybe. But that's something layman believers can do too, right? Like which they do probably naturally, maybe more than we do,
yeah.
so and how that gonna eventually, somehow, I don't know. I mean, depends on as you approach it, but again, it's not so much about using a textbook or how we eloquently share the gospel. Of course, we need to be trained that, if the opportunity comes. But,
Hmm.
I think it's a lot of times how we live our lives, right? And, you know, live out the gospel by having the fruits of spirit in our lives. And that's when people are attracted, and even the community of, the people will be easily invited to the community of Jesus.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean necessarily Sunday service, I don't think. Like just,
Yeah.
where Christians are actually loving one another in the family, or in even just the family, or even the brothers and sisters, we interact in the daily lives, not necessarily only Sunday service, that we are the one that who love in one another. But
Yep. All right. Thanks. And talk to you again.